Time for another balance patch where we focus on the subclasses. We're mostly through the ripple effects of adding new classes, so we will switch to a slower balance patch schedule soon, so unless some major issue comes up, there might be no balance patch next week. In the meantime, we are preparing the next item set, coming soon. Added a new outfit for Berserker, balancing Leaf Badge from 3 to 2.5, Skull Badge from 2.5 to 2.2, Flame Badge Heat from 3 to 4. I didn't realize Flame Badge got buffed to 3. It's been a while since I've been offered a Flame Badge. Kind of surprised to see Leaf Badge buffed. Leaf Badge is the one that I'm usually the most happy to take, because just adding crits to every other non-ranger class is a big deal. Having access to Acorn Collar. Even if you never see any clovers, just Leaf Badge plus Acorn Collar is a lot of crit chance. Especially now with it at 2.5. Yeah, the pattern's usually like get Leaf Badge, buy a couple flutes to fix your stamina, while also generating a bit of luck. Then eventually grab an Acorn Collar and all your weapons can crit. Plays really well with Double Axe. Plays pretty well with like Darksaber or Bloodthorn on Reaper. Plays... I don't know how it works on Pyro. I don't know when the last time I was offered Leaf Badge on Pyro was. But yeah, even better now. Skull Badge. 2.2 seconds is a strong Goobert trigger. If you want to be doing Goobert stuff, Skull Badge is going to be on your board for a while. And 8 heat is half a gloves for your entire board. Not bad. It's kind of weak early, but as your board grows, the heat becomes more and more relevant. But yeah, good for crits, good for Goobert, good later. Probably the best badge to pick up late. Maybe the Zerker badge is a little better to pick up late, but they're similar. Blood Harvester, cost 11 to 10. I don't think the cost of this item matters in the slightest. I feel like this item could cost 15 gold. It would be exactly as good as it is now. You buy it when you're in the comp that it plays with, and it's the nuts. If you're not in a comp that it's good with, you're not buying it. Yeah. Cool. I guess things in general getting cheaper is nice. I really hate feeling, especially with the really big items, feeling like the item that I'm buying is taking my entire turn plus a little extra. Or whenever you spend 12 gold on a Shield of Valor or 13 gold on a Sun Armor, it just feels like you're burning multiple turns to get one item, which just doesn't feel great. If we saw these late game items move down in cost overall, I'd be cool to see that. Looks like it's just the uniques this patch, but also Villain Sword. Sure. Pretty sure the win rates on Villain Sword when we looked at it weren't that low, but yeah, I'm not sure how you're supposed to build Villain Sword nowadays. I tried to do the high stam cost build, but it just fell off a little too early. Granted, this was a couple weeks ago. Maybe other early games have gotten nerfed since then, and it's more reasonable, but I don't know. Stone cooldown from 3 to 2.7 is a big buff to Bag of Rocks. A 10% buff to each stone. Kinda crazy. I don't know. On Ranger, it competes with... Well, it doesn't even really compete with bows. It competes for space on bows, but... This is a buff to any defensive comp that wants to go Steel Goob. This is a significantly faster Goob payoff than putting one bow on the Goob. It's effectively a 1.35 second trigger. Probably better than a 1.35 second trigger, because the first attack happens later, so there's a chance that you have your first Goobert trigger by the time these things swing for the first time. I don't know. The accuracy sucks, but if you just like got a flute lying around, it's not that hard to fix the accuracy on the stones. But probably mostly a Steel Goob thing. Or just on sale Bag of Rocks, making that even better. It's not that hard to have some stones lying around in general. Falcon Blade cooldown. Sure. I don't know. I don't like seeing these really hard to make items get better. The metas where the right thing to do is force the hard to craft items feel so bad. Because a bunch of your games, you end up missing and you queue into the people that happen to hit, and it's just a mess. I don't know. Maybe there's a middle ground where it's fine. Rapier cooldown goes back up to what it was before the last buff. That's probably fine. It was probably more playable than people were playing it back when it was 1.4. And just the last buff put it in people's knowledge. It might go back to, rather than being a primary plan, just being a backup option, but I don't think it's that big of a nerf overall. Even if it didn't see much play the last time it was at 1.4. That was probably just a knowledge thing. ILG, empowered cooldown stamina cost from 2.2 to 2.0. Oh. Okay, I like this buff to ILG. Not because I think that it matters, but because it's not also a buff to the Busted Blade combined turn. I would have preferred to see a change like this last week to a baseline improvement to ILG. Something that rewards you for building around specifically ILG, rather than being a buff to the item that is already good. I imagine it's not enough to make people actually play it, but I don't know. It's not that hard to get Empower anymore. It was a lot harder in the demo. Maybe there's a way to do it. Lightsaber gets an extra blind. That's cool, I guess. I was doing some Pyro lightsaber stuff. It wasn't an amazing strat, but it was a solid backup plan when you didn't hit one of your good weapons early. Or you just like needed something to pivot into on turn 8 or 9. You go like Rapier plus Lightsaber and have that be your damage package, and then you just buy defense from there. And it was like good enough to win. It didn't have great matchups into anything, but if you were ahead enough econ, it worked. Yeah, I don't know. Definitely a buff to that. One blind doesn't look like a ton, but it's one fewer pocket sand that you need to be where Lightsaber was at before. Divine Potion, cleanse threshold from 20 to 10. Oh my god, this thing is actually going to trigger against only Reaper still. But, I mean, it's a good change. Does this matter against anything? I guess comps that are trying to blind you. It's another tech to play around Lightsaber. Hopefully they... Wait, did the bug with Lightsaber get fixed again? It doesn't look like it. So Lightsaber can still apply the next round of blind before it removes the blind. Because that was happening last week. That was the thing that made me stop wanting to play Lightsaber. Is in some amount of fights it just decided to not work. But yeah, I mean, Divine Potion, good into Poison, good into Darksaber. If people are playing Lightsaber, it could be good. I don't think there's any Berserker build that Divine Potion gets utility against. It's good into Ivy Ranger. It's just awkward to put it anywhere other than the top of your potion stack, because you have no control over whether or not the Divine Potion triggers. If you have 5 Pestilence Flasks under Scythe, then you have control over this triggering. Ooh. Yeah, I don't know. It's also weird to put it at the top of your potion stack if you're using something other than health potions. Because a bunch of other potions you're trying to trigger at the start of combat. Top or bottom, doesn't matter if you're talking about an otherwise empty slot. Sure. That's fair. But it's more, if it's at the bottom of the stack and it doesn't trigger, it doesn't do anything. Where if it's at the top of the stack and it doesn't trigger, you're theoretically still getting some value from it. Because another potion is giving you the activation. Ruby Egg now also gains 2 heat at the start of battle. That's cool. Pretty minor buff, but makes the Ruby Egg turn a lot better. A little better. Slightly better. A little less painful. Stone Armor, health-based block from 30 to 35. Cool. Don't know if I'm ever excited to make that, but if you're playing more defensively, maybe. Especially if you don't have high stamina cost. Pyro, Burning Banner, cooldown from 3 to 3.2. Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I don't know how much that matters. Burning Banner was the most interactive of the Pyro subclasses. That said, for all the times that I'm playing comps that hate running into Burning Banner, I'm still more annoyed by the Dragon Nest comp than I am the Burning Banner comps. But it appears that is the only subclass not getting a change. Phoenix health cost from 12 to 11. It's just undoing one of the previous ones. Were people not buying Phoenixes last week? I feel like that thing was still solid. The Burning Sword comp just doesn't care about the health cost, because it's so good at racing. Like, I don't think any of the health changes mattered that much. I'm just surprised to see this get undone. Dark Lantern, debuff per dark item goes up. Sure. I don't know, man. Can we just get more dark items? I feel like this is not the issue. When Dark Lantern's popping off, it's pretty good. The issue is just you only see so many corrupted crystals, and the only way to get dark items on Pyro is to get offered a bunch of corrupted crystals. And realistically, you also want to spend a bunch of gold combining those with other things, because crystals themselves don't do anything on your board. Even in a theoretical world where you're playing a debuff Pyro somehow and you're socketing the crystals, then the socketed crystals don't count for Dark Lantern. It's just in a really weird spot. Like, is this just saying we're never going to get more dark items other than Corrupted Crystal? Because that's kind of disappointing. Or is this just like a temporary stopgap for from now until then? Need a late game build for Reaper. Can't get anything worth going beyond 10 wins with at the moment. Yeah, I haven't gotten to the Reaper changes yet, but Darksaber kind of worked last week. Basically, every Reaper comp that I wanted to take to the late game required having 2 pigs early. Reaper was the pig class, which was getting real rough because other classes' early games were very spooky. Like, every time I took a pig on Reaper and then ran into a Flame Spear, I just wanted to close the game and never boot it up again. Speaking of, where is Flame Spear? How is that item still not nerfed? Spear and Dagger are both totally fine, and none of the other early game stuff getting buffed. I really hate where Pyro is at in the early game at the moment. It just feels like you hit one of your rares, or you're going to have a really shitty game. And if you do hit one of your rares, you're probably going to have an insane game. But torches don't really work for keeping you alive. Burning Sword comes online eventually, but again, not really exciting. It's still losing to most of the other baseline stuff that the other classes can do. But if you get a dagger, or if you get a spear, you're just unbeatable until subclassing. Coincidentally, the hit rate for rares is the perfect early game win rate. No changes needed. What is... Let me check bag meta. What is... Molten... Oh my god. I mean, I guess Molten Spear theoretically falls off on round 7, according to these charts. But I mean, I don't think this chart is a reasonable chart to have. Like... what is this? It's not like it's an epic, right? Like, epics don't show up that much. This is just so not fun. It's just so feast or famine. I think I didn't narrow down the ranks. 1 second. Let's see if it gets better if we narrow down the ranks. Not really. It just makes round 7 fall off. I say round 7 fall off, but this is still what, like 60-40? It doesn't get bad until round 9? Even then, it's not bad. It's like maintaining 50-50 until 11. Ugh. Yeah, Pyro went from a lot of fun to play with a lot of variety to... blech. Frozen Flame, heat threshold for cold from 7 to 6. I like this change. It's moving some of the power for the cold build away from the cold items and more into heat generation. I believe the last time Frozen Flame was above 7 per heat was back when Heat Goob was still 5 triggers to get heat, rather than 6. Which is where a lot of the heat was coming from before. I think all of the heat generation for Pyro has gotten nerfed since this thing was good. Honestly, I'd be curious to see it go back to just 5. The problem was probably just how easy it was to generate heat before. Was Magma to source the stats? I'm not entirely sure. I think the way it works is when you open up the game, you're sent a bunch of boards, which is how it generates your opponents. And then it uses all the boards that the game sends you to generate the stats. Okay, a bunch of Zerker changes. Brass Knuckles getting its weekly nerf once again. Shaman Mask cooldown from 3 to 3.2. Is that a buff or a nerf? It depends on my build. I guess on average this is a nerf. Maybe it depends on my opponent's build more than my build. It's a buff into Darksaber. It's actually kind of a big buff into Darksaber. But against everyone else, you'd probably rather just have the buffs come on. Chain Whip gets nerfed again. Cool. I feel like this item just needs a redesign. I don't think there is a place for Chain Whip in the meta that is reasonable. If this thing's strong, it's going to be miserable. If this thing's weak, it's going to not exist. We've basically done the full thing, right? It's just a really easy to make efficient tech item that happens to also be your stamina for the comp. But I mean, I'd rather see less Chain Whips than more Chain Whips, so happy to see the direction that it's being pushed in. From day one, when no one was playing Chain Whip, I called this item absurd, and it is still absurd. Busted Blade, cooldown and stamina cost during Battle Rage from 2.8 to 3. Okay, so this undoes the most recent buff to Busted Blade, which was a completely unnecessary buff. Because even pre-buff, this was one of the highest win rate weapons in the game. Good to see, but let's see. Let's check bag meta. From the last day, how's Busted Blade looking? That might be the strongest chart I've ever seen. Now, you do have to keep in mind, this is just the games where people are getting Busted Blade together. So it is possible that the people that are aiming for Busted Blade are just dying before getting the Busted Blade often enough. But still, it's not like you need to build around it that hard. Like, you are seeing a fall-off around round 16, so people are dying, despite the high win rate. So it's likely they're getting it together without that many lives. I don't know, it's not even that much of a fall-off. Like, it's no more extreme than the puppy fall-off. Yikes. Yeah, actually, that's not much of a fall-off at all. Never mind. Forget I said anything. Or friendly fire. Anyway. Dragon Skill Armor. Finally a nerf to the best defensive item in the game. It seemed like they were just willing to balance Berserker around this item existing for the entirety of early access, but finally getting a nerf to this thing. It's like kind of an innocuous item. Damage reduction isn't the easiest to realize it's doing something, but additive DR is a messed up mechanic. Very happy to see something done to this. Like, it's hard to tell exactly how much Dragon Scale Armor is doing, because it doesn't really show up in the log, so it's easy to slip under the radar. But, I mean, there's a reason why, even with that, you see almost every Berserker making Dragon Scale Armors, often in multiples. Gearwood Guardian, Battle Rage bonus. duration from 0.6 to 0.8. That's a lot. Huh. That's like a lot. Now, with the Dragon Scale nerf, it's not as good to be in Battle Rage, but that's huge. You just like don't even need to buy collars if you take Deerwood anymore. How many stars does this thing have? It's like 10, right? Oh, I can't see it. 9 stars. So what, you get in total like 11 seconds of Battle Rage? Off of just your subclass? Huh. I mean, that's a pretty big buff to the Eggscal build, too. Buff to Eggscal, buff to the Magic Ranger Zerker that I tried a couple times. Interesting. And we'll get another star back. Huh. Yeah, Anvil really close to being just what it was 2 weeks ago. Kind of interesting. When it got nerfed the one time, or the week that it got murdered, pretty much the only time that I was taking Anvil was when I was doing either Magic Torch stuff or I had a Ranger Collar, or Ranger Charm. So not that crazy to see it still underperforming, despite basically being where it was before the nerfs. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder what the reason it was that it got nerfed initially. I don't think its win rate was that high. Maybe its play rate was just high and they wanted to... No, Knuckles was always more popular. I guess Anvil was second place and they just wanted to bring it down a bit. Yeah, I don't know. Hey, Shumator. The Acorn Collar Charm. Yeah, basically, the charm that gives you crits. Anytime you can scale flat damage, you're going to benefit a lot from crits. Fun run earlier, you got Rock Badge, the HLS, double bag of rocks. Yeah, that's probably gotten a lot better. Rocks have gotten a lot faster. Leaf loses another star. So what, it was 8, now it's 7? It is... Now, the raw value that you're getting from it isn't as crazy as it was. But it is easier to build around now. Like, with each star that it's losing, there's more space on your board to not put garbage on your board. That said, I don't know how much one more star matters for that. It's kind of sad seeing all of the utility in Leaf get shifted from regen to mana. And now it's worse at generating regen than it used to be, through, like, no fault of the Bloodthorn comp. But I don't know. It's not like the Bloodthorn comp is good. Maybe it's forever uses just to be a mana generator. Piercing Arrow. Luck gain chance to 45%. Every time they buff Piercing Arrow, I think, okay, this is the buff. Piercing Arrow is finally going to be good again. And then I play Piercing Arrow for a game and remember exactly how power crept all of the builds from the beta are. Like, you cannot just play Bow plus Ripsaw Blade anymore. That is not a real source of damage. But maybe this time. But no, I think the only builds that I've had any success with Piercing Arrow on have just been pure Magic Staff. I've tried to play with Rapier, and it wasn't very good. I guess that's a comp that cares a lot about the proc chance going up. That Rapier just lost speed, so it kind of cancels out. Yeah, I don't know. Big bowl of treats, food speed increase. I guess. I do like moving the power of these subclasses away from the things they put in the shop and more into their inherent value. Like, I'm really happy to see this part of Big Bull getting buffed rather than the animals, or this part of Frozen Flame getting buffed rather than the chill items themselves. But this just feels like such a do-nothing stat by the time subclasses come online. You get to speed up carrots to get some empower. But it's what? It's still 4 seconds into the fight, 3 seconds into the fight, you get a gloves. 6 seconds into the fight, you get 2 gloves. And you're speeding up things that are trying to snowball over the course of the fight. It's like... It's almost like a budget Excalibur. But just from playing it, it just feels so irrelevant. I'll probably try it again. 20% is in fact more than 15%. Percent agree, it leads to weird signaling stuff where the power isn't in what it's signaling you to do. Well, the thing that it's signaling you to do now isn't the things that it puts in your store, it's in the other part of the effect. Which I think is a better place for it to be. Like, I would prefer the signal to be on the thing that the subclass does, rather than the thing that the subclass adds to the shop. Like, Mr. Struggles does this pretty well, where it adds Mrs. Struggles and Mrs. Fortune to the shop, but you can also just build around the text on Mr. Struggles. Now, we can argue how viable Fatigue Reaper is, but I think that's a better place for these subclasses to be, rather than you pick the subclass so that you can spend even more gold looking through shops to find specific items that the subclass puts in your store. I think that leads to really bad gameplay. I agree that that's a thing people can think of. I think the pattern of I'm going to spend 10 gold on this subclass, and then I have to roll a couple times, and then spend 5 to 7 gold on this other item, just to make my subclass feel meaningful, is a really awful play pattern. Like, dogs are really guilty of this, where you take 10 gold for basically a do-nothing item, that then you have to roll into dogs and spend the entire turns rolling and buying dogs just to make your subclass do something. It's about optimizing your options, not quite about just buying stuff. To an extent. I think buying stuff is a big part of the game. You shouldn't need to roll into dogs. The main dog should just do things. I mean, I'm agreeing with that. What? That is my argument, yeah. I want to feel like the things that I'm doing are doing things, especially on subclasses. Something as impactful as your subclass choice. Oh, okay, yeah. Well, I mean, I would also say that a significant amount of the fun of the game is buying stuff and playing your shops. And it's just like taking the subclass kind of makes you not want to play the shops anymore, and instead just roll to play your subclass. So like I would take issue with that part of the argument, but yeah, I don't know how important this line of text change is, but I like to see this direction for buffing Big Bull. Moving some of the power, because when Big Bull was initially introduced, pretty much all of the power in Big Bull was in Squirrel and the other line, where your pets have a 20% chance to activate twice. So it's just doubling down on making sure that you find pets. Because you did not care about, I think it was initially every 5 seconds, gain 2 buffs to make food trigger 10% faster. Just completely irrelevant. Almost everything this was doing was enabling squirrels, enabling rats, and then giving you crazy Goobert triggers once you do find those things. I think the add stuff to shop subclasses are all meh, but these shifts create a problem for new and worse players. It's not obviously supposed to ignore it. Well, it's not that you're supposed to ignore it. It's that the subclass does something even when you don't have those things. Where the issue with this and Frozen Flame is that you pick them and then they don't do anything until you have the items they enable. Maybe the subclasses with extra items, open an extra slot. That's sort of what they do. The way that I think I would like to see it would just be either similar to the unique system, where at the start of your turn, you're always offered one of the subclass items, but you can't roll into them. Or if they just gave you a random subclass item every turn. And either took away some gold or rebalanced them to be not as big as they currently are. So sort of like the Pyro Bag works. But the gameplay of them taking your entire turn to roll and then buy class items just feels bad. Carrot, more empower chance. Cool. Yeah, I don't know how much you're gonna feel 5%, but it's somewhat meaningful. What comps want to play a carrot right now? I guess you could play it in the Magic Torch builds, but I don't know if you'd want to. It fits in Leaf. It seems like there's better things to spend money on. Maybe if you get an early carrot, you can keep it around. It's probably better than garlic. It's the kind of thing that starts being good late when you have good luck, but you don't really want to buy it late. That's the issue that I have with carrot. It's not good until you hit the 5 luck threshold, which usually doesn't happen until after subclassing. But at the same time, once you've subclassed, there's other stuff that you want to be doing. Maybe it's cheap enough that you still can just add it to your boards, but still. I don't know. Just a weird place for the item to be. Like, the couple patches that carrot was good was back when Fatigue Reaper was really popular. And just getting some source of scaling damage was really hard. Steel Grouper was in a bad spot, and carrot was really the only thing you could play that gave you scaling damage. And it just made Fatigue Reaper a easy auto win, pretty much no matter what you're doing on Ranger, as long as you had some kind of damage scaling. Are you bursting before carrot helps in Hammer Dagger? It depends on the matchup. Like, it'll help in the matchups where your burst doesn't kill. Like, it's not like you're getting raced every time. There is some value there. Like, maybe into Zerkers it matters, where you're able to survive through Battle Rage, but you want to have a little bit of scaling damage to finish the deal. Like, they're scaling up rubies. You just want to have a little bit of scaling damage so that you kill them when they leave Battle Rage, or kill them in Battle Rage, because your clock gets slower from the DR. Shade. Is it just back to being fully unnerfed from what it was? Why did it get nerfed in the first place? I'm so confused. So, okay, not fully unnerfed. It was 2 to 10. Huh. Yeah, I don't know. I never played with this when it was initially 2 to 10, because I never realized that it had a different damage range than the other bows. And I thought that was the reason that they changed it. Was because it was just weird for all of the other short bows to have the same damage range, but this one to be different. But that seems to not be their philosophy. The nerf came with an increase to the debuffs? I don't think so. I think the increase to the debuffs happened after, but I could be wrong. Certainly one of the buffs happened after. Okay. Yeah, no, I thought if they were going to change this more, it wouldn't have been to the damage range. It would have just been to the text on it to keep consistency. I don't care too much either way, but... Oops. Where are they? Oh, I'm on Reaper. Yeah, it is weird for both of these to have the same range, and then this one to... Not only like a different damage number, but such a weird damage range. I guess these are different too. I have never made big poison bow. I mean, like, even here, the range is 3. What is the big bow's range? What is it even called? Belladonna something, right? I mean, this is still... Like, it's still a range of 3, from 6 to 9. Yeah, like, balance-wise, it's whatever. Just design-wise, it's a bit weird. It's one of those things I'd like to see an explanation in the notes, rather than just the note. Snake. Cooldown from 2.5 to 2.4. Okay. So it's slowly working its way back down. When did it stop being played? Did it go from 2.2 straight to 2.6? I'm pretty sure until it's 2.2 again, you just take Hexblade over it. Like, it's one of those things where the margin between Snake and Hexblade, just on their abilities, isn't really that wide. But the cooldown and being a better goob trigger is going to be the tiebreaker between which one you take. Like, probably until Snake is tied with Dagger again, you're just going to keep taking Dagger. Pestilence Flask is more expensive, rarer than the Clovers or Tusk, so it makes some sense for it to be higher damage. Yeah, but then you would think the Clover one would also get a bit of a damage buff. Or you would just make the text on Belladonna Shade do a little bit more, rather than change the damage range. Or change the minimum damage up too. Like, why just the max damage? It just seems weird. Like, the only other items in the game that have a huge range is Spear and Hungry Blade, right? Just strange for a combine that is part of a cycle and has something in... part of a cycle and has a corresponding cycle to have very little tie-in with the other in the cycle with its unique feature. Like, if the big bow also had a big damage range, I would get it. Because the damage doesn't specifically matter more. Well, then why change the damage at all? But it's not like this gains max damage. This just gains damage. Again, not a complaint, but to get picked more. I mean, sure, but just why change that? Like, again, I'm not complaining about the balance here. Just the design seems a bit weird. Misfortune... What is going on here? This is going back to 2.5. I mean... Is it gonna make its way back to 1.8? This is such a big speed buff. Do we want it to be a goob trigger or not? I guess 2.5 after subclassing isn't that crazy. Still good. That's still... I guess it's not stamina weapon good, like it was before. Do we know how the range math works? I'm pretty sure it's an even distribution. Why wouldn't it be? But yeah. Misfortune, eh? So what, it's buffed relative to 3 weeks ago, but it's, again, just the only builds that really made use of this thing. We're using it as a goop trigger, in addition to its other value. The difference between 2 and 3 is something, especially on a class that has a hard time generating luck. I don't know. It's definitely a buff from... It's a buff in the context of not having a goob. It might be a wash now, relative to what it was in the builds that have a goob. Like, you're still probably using it as a trigger, but now your luck launders into more vampirism. Gaming in general, damage ranges feel bell curvy. Do they? Yeah, I don't know. I'm not aware of any games that do damage ranges that way, but it wouldn't surprise me. It surprised me a little. I don't know, I guess the average damage would be the same either way. Any game with multiple... Yeah, okay. If you're using dice, that's fair. A Reaper without a weapon, you had a broom, you had food against a weapon, and 1. Yeah. They have a weapon. It's called Storage Coffin. You're finding out the reason why Reaper is strong early game. Nocturnal Locklifter, lifesteal bonus from 8 to 9. cool, I guess. Cool, I guess. I don't know. It is cool being able to get lifesteal on your Bloodthorn without needing to go gems. Like, percentage lifesteal on your Bloodthorn. It seems like there's so few comps that can take advantage of this. And the comps that can, it's not clear that Lifter's better than just going Mrs. Fortune for more buffs. Like, it's a buff to a fringe version of a fringe comp, if that makes sense. Cauldron! Heal from 15 to 17. What was Cauldron's win rate last week? I never looked. Actually... It's slowly getting there. It's slowly getting there. It's doing a little worse than a coin flip. Oh wait, this is today. This isn't last week. This is after the most recent buff. Well... I don't know. I mean... It's pretty bad. But it's okay. It'll get there eventually. Just one more buff. One more buff and we'll be there. Strong Divine Potion. Ooh. Cleanse special from 20 to 10. Cleanse amount from 13 to 10. Okay, so now the only benefit that Strong Divine Potion has over regular Divine Potion is in giving you buffs. Which, to be fair, is the main thing you made Strong Divine Potion for anyway. So it being easier to trigger is definitely a buff. Strong Vampiric Potion. Lifesteal from 20 to 30%. I don't understand what we're supposed to do with these things. Like, the Bloodthorn Cauldron stuff is cool, but none of the things Cauldron gives you particularly synergize with Bloodthorn. And we keep getting this lifesteal bonus on Lifter buffed. And this is lifesteal for the whole fight rather than temporary. Maybe the idea is when you have an early game with potions and Bloodthorn, you go Cauldron, and when you don't, you go Lifter or Struggles. Like, Flute makes you go Struggles, nothing makes you go Lifter, as in you don't have anything extra, you go Lifter as the default. And then if you have health potions, you go Cauldron. Like, that's cool in theory. I don't know. Just so much slower. Like, the chain to upgrade the potions is kind of rough. Like, you take Cauldron. Unless you're using herbs early to make strong health pots already, you have to spend a turn Cauldroning up the health pot, then spend a turn with the Vamp Amulet to make strong Vamp. Or, with the Vamp Amulet to turn your strong health pot into a Vamp pot. And then you Cauldron again that Vamp pot into a strong Vamp pot. It's just so much work. So much work to turn your 3 regen potion into a 3 vampirism potion. I mean, you could instead just, like, you know, buy cards. But yeah. Maybe there's some universe where you're playing this with Unhealing? Seems difficult, but maybe. You can go, like, Hungry Blade, Vampiric Potion. Need stamina, you still gotta find mana. I feel like that's too many parts, but maybe? It's tough to support Bloodthorn plus Unhealing. That would be kind of cool if the stamina was better. But once you start having to get stamina plus mana plus potions plus Bloodthorn plus Unhealing, that starts to reach Magical Christmas Land territory. Ruby Chonk. Damage +1. Okay. Fixed a bug where a unique item could appear in the shop despite a unique limit. Huh. Oh, is this the cursor bug? Where if the item was on the cursor, it didn't count as being in your bag? I saw a screenshot where someone got 2 decks using the trick, so I guess this is fixing it. Okay, so what's exciting in here? Big bowl? Oh no. Big bowl carrot? Let's try.